At a billionaire's dinner, his son nearly choked to death in front of everyone. No one moved, except the cleaning lady. She saved him in seconds while the elites stood frozen. But the real twist, the billionaire fell in love with her. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise that this will be the best story you will hear in your life. The Thornton estate sparkled under the evening lights, a fortress of wealth nestled in the Hamptons, where the Atlantic breeze carried the scent of opulence. Inside, a charity gala was underway, the kind that appeared in society magazines the following day, with captions praising the generosity of America's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast prism-like reflections across the marble floors, while waitstaff in pristine uniforms navigated through clusters of influential guests. In the east wing of the mansion, away from the buzz of champagne toasts and practiced laughter, Elena Ramirez methodically restocked fresh towels in the guest bathrooms. At 32, she moved with quiet efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her uniform pressed despite having been on her feet since dawn. The estate employed 27 staff members, but Elena was the most recent hire, still, learning the intricate hierarchy that governed life below the surface of the Thornton wealth. The household manager had been explicit. Staff were to remain invisible during events. Like oxygen, Mrs. Winters had said during orientation, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she gestured. Essential, but unseen. Elena had nodded, thinking of her twin daughters waiting at her sister's apartment in Queens. This job paid double her previous position. Invisibility was a small price for their future. A burst of laughter echoed down the corridor. Elena glanced at her watch, 10 minutes before she needed to help in the kitchen. She hurried to finish her task, passing by the half-open door of the library where 12-year-old Lucas Thornton sat alone, picking at a plate of food while playing a game on his tablet. Elena had seen the boy before, always at a distance. The only child of billionaire investor James Thornton, Lucas was thin for his age, with serious eyes that seemed to observe everything. Staff whispered that he'd been different since his mother's illness 3 years ago. After Victoria Thornton's condition, James had thrown himself into his work, while his fiancée, Cassandra Winters, sister to the household manager, had stepped into the role of organizing their social life. "I hate these parties," Lucas muttered, not looking up as Elena passed. She paused, surprised he'd spoken to her. "They can be long," she offered carefully. Lucas glanced up, seeming startled that someone had answered. "My dad says I have to make an appearance, but then I can hide." He pointed to his plate. "I got a bunch of food so I don't have to go back out." Elena smiled. "Smart strategy." "Are you new? I haven't seen you before." 3 weeks, Elena replied. "I mostly work mornings when you're at school." Lucas nodded, returning to his game. Elena stepped away, aware that Mrs. Winters would not approve of her chatting with the young heir. But as she turned, she heard a strange, muffled sound. She looked back. Lucas's tablet had fallen to the carpet. His hands were at his throat, eyes wide with panic. Elena didn't hesitate. Within seconds, she was beside him, recognizing the universal sign of choking. "I'm going to help you," she said firmly, moving behind him. 5 years as a nursing assistant before her layoff had taught her emergency response. She positioned her hands and performed the Heimlich maneuver with practiced precision. Nothing happened on the first thrust, or the second. Lucas's lips were turning bluish, his face reddening. Elena adjusted her stance and tried again, harder. On the 4th attempt, a piece of steak shot from his mouth, landing on the imported rug. The boy gasped desperately for air, tears streaming down his face as he collapsed back against her. Elena held him steady, checking his breathing. "You're okay now. Take slow breaths." The commotion had drawn attention. James Thornton appeared. In the doorway, expression shifting from annoyance to horror as he absorbed the scene. Behind him, Cassandra Winters and her brother, the household manager Gregory Winters, watched with matching expressions of shock. "Lucas!" James rushed forward, kneeling beside his son. "What happened?" "He was choking, sir," Eleanor explained, stepping back. "Food was lodged in his airway." Cassandra pushed past. pulling Lucas from Eleanor's steadying hands. "Are you all right, darling? Gregory, call Dr. Hoffman immediately." "I'm okay," Lucas rasped, his voice hoarse. He looked at Eleanor with reddened eyes. "She saved me." James stood slowly, turning to face Elena with an unreadable expression. He was taller in person than he appeared in the financial news profiles, his dark hair touched with silver at the temples, his bespoke suit emphasizing athletic shoulders that suggested he still made time for the gym despite running a global investment firm. "You're one of the housekeeping staff?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Elena Ramirez." "And you know the Heimlich maneuver?" "I was a certified nursing assistant for 5 years before hospital budget cuts. I've maintained my emergency response certification." Gregory Winters stepped forward, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Mr. Thornton, we should get Lucas checked by a professional. This woman isn't medically qualified to—" "She saved my son's life," James interrupted, his tone silencing further protest. He extended his hand to Elena. "Thank you, Ms. Ramirez." The gesture, treating her as an equal in front of his household manager and fiancé, sent a ripple through the room. Elena shook his hand, aware of Cassandra's narrowing eyes and Gregory's thin-lipped disapproval. "I was just doing what anyone would do, sir." "Not anyone," James corrected. "Most people freeze in emergencies. You didn't." Lucas wiped his face with his sleeve. "I couldn't breathe. No sound came out. I thought—" He stopped, unable to finish. Cassandra smoothed his hair, composing herself. "Well, thank goodness Elena was passing by. Now we should return to our guests, James. They'll wonder where you've disappeared to. Gregory can handle this." James seemed reluctant to leave. "Lucas, do you want to see Dr. Hoffman?" The boy shook his head. "I'm fine now. Can I just stay here?" "Of course." James squeezed his son's shoulder. He turned to Eleanor. "Would you mind staying with him for a bit, just to make sure he's all right?" Before Eleanor could answer, Cassandra intervened. "James, that's not her job. She has duties in the kitchen. I'll have one of the nannies. The nannies are off tonight." "It's just staff for the event," Gregory reminded her. "Then I'll stay with Lucas," Cassandra decided. "No," Lucas said, surprising everyone. "You have to go with Dad for the charity announcement, remember?" Cassandra hesitated, caught between social obligation and demonstrating concern. James ended the dilemma. "Elena will stay with Lucas. Gregory, please inform the kitchen staff." His tone left no room for argument. When they were alone, Lucas slumped into a leather armchair. "Thanks for staying. I don't like when Cassandra hovers. She asks too many questions." Elena sat in a chair nearby, feeling out of place among the first edition books and museum-quality art. "You should drink some water. Choking can irritate your throat." Lucas nodded, reaching for a glass on the side table. "How'd you learn to do that?" "The thing you did to save me?" "My training and—" Eleanor paused, memories surfacing. "Personal experience." "Did someone you know choke?" Eleanor nodded, not elaborating. Some stories weren't meant for children, especially not the trauma that had driven her into healthcare to begin with. Her brother's accident when she was 16 had shaped her entire life path. "My mum got sick when I was 9, Lucas said suddenly. "Cancer. She's in Switzerland now, at a special treatment center. Dad says she's getting better, but I haven't seen her in 18 months. The unexpected confidence startled Elena. "I'm sorry to hear that. It must be difficult." "Dad's different now, busier. And then there's Cassandra." He said the name flatly. "She's not bad, I guess. Just not—" He trailed off, returning to his tablet. Elena understood the unspoken comparison. Not his mother, not family, not yet someone he trusted. She recognized the look of a child navigating loss and change. She saw it in her own daughter's eyes on the difficult days when they asked about their father, who had returned to Mexico 2 years ago with promises to send for them that never materialized. Outside the library, the gala continued. Glasses clinked, deals were made, charitable donations were pledged. But inside this quiet room, something subtle had shifted. Eleanor didn't know it yet, but the simple act of being in the right place at the right time, of stepping forward when others might have hesitated, had set in motion changes that would reshape multiple lives, including her own. The following morning, Eleanor arrived at the Thornton estate at her usual time of 6:30 a.m. The aftermath of the gala had been cleared away by the night staff, leaving no evidence of the previous evening's extravagance. She had expected the incident with Lucas to fade similarly into the background, one dramatic moment in a household where staff turnover was high and personal connections discouraged. She was wrong. Gregory Winters was waiting for her in the staff entrance, his posture rigid. "Ms. Ramirez, Mr. Thornton would like to see. Are you in his office before you begin your duties?" Elena's stomach tightened. Despite James Thornton's gratitude last night, she had violated the cardinal rule of the household: visibility. "Is there a problem?" "Mr. Thornton will explain." Gregory's clipped tone revealed nothing as he led her through the service corridors and up the rear staircase to the wing that housed the family's private offices. James Thornton was already at his desk when they arrived, dressed in a tailored suit despite the early hour. Multiple screens displayed financial data, and a half-empty cup of coffee suggested he'd been working for some time. "Thank you, Gregory," he said, dismissing the household manager with a nod. When they were alone, he gestured to the chair across from him. "Please sit down." Eleanor perched on the edge of the seat, her hands folded in her lap. "Sir, if this is about last night, it is." James leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've been reviewing our household safety protocols. We have 27 staff members, multiple security personnel, and yet none of them are properly trained in emergency response. That's unacceptable." Of all the directions she had expected this conversation to take, this wasn't one of them. "I see. Lucas is everything to me, Ms. Ramirez. Everything." The controlled power in his voice cracked slightly. "I've spent my career calculating risks, identifying vulnerabilities in markets and organizations, but I missed a fundamental one in my own home. Accidents happen, Mr. Thornton. You couldn't have predicted." "That's exactly my point. We don't predict, we prepare." He pushed a folder across the desk. "I want to create a new position, Director of Household Health and Safety. The role would involve training all staff in basic emergency procedures, ensuring medical supplies are properly maintained, and coordinating with our security team on overall household protocols." Elena stared at the folder but didn't open it. "That sounds like an excellent idea." "I'd like you to take the position." Her head snapped up. "Me, but I've only been here 3 weeks." "You're qualified. More importantly, you've demonstrated the right instincts under pressure." He gestured to the folder. "The salary is double your current rate, with improved benefits and adjusted hours that might better accommodate your family situation." Elena's thoughts raced to her daughters. Better hours would mean more time with them, maybe even the possibility of moving to a larger apartment. The salary increase would allow her to start a college fund. "This is very generous," she said carefully. "But I'm not sure Mr. Winters would approve of promoting someone so new." James's expression hardened slightly. "Gregory doesn't need to approve. He needs to implement." Elena hesitated, sensing undercurrents. "May I ask why me, specifically? Surely there are security professionals or medical consultants better suited." "Because Lucas trusts you." The simple statement hung in the air. "He spoke to me about you this morning. It's the most animated I've seen him in months." James ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that momentarily disrupted his polished appearance. "My son and we've been disconnected since his mother's illness. He retreats further each month, but he connected with you." The vulnerability in his admission surprised her. This wasn't the calculating billionaire from the financial press, but a father worried about his child. "I appreciate the offer." "Mr. Thornton, I'd like to accept, but you're concerned about the household dynamics." He nodded. "Understandable. The Winters siblings have been with me for years. They're efficient but traditional in their approach to household management. Change won't be easy for them." That's putting it mildly. A flicker of amusement crossed his face at her candor. "I admire directness, Ms. Ramirez. It's refreshing in an environment where people typically tell me what they think I want to hear. I can't afford that luxury, sir. I have my daughters to consider. Twins, correct? Your file mentioned them. Elena nodded, surprised he knew this detail. Sophia and Isabella. They're 7. Lucas was 7 when Victoria became ill. Shadow passed over his features. Children are resilient, but they shouldn't have to be. He straightened, professional again. Think about the offer. We can discuss details tomorrow. As Elena left the office, she nearly collided with Cassandra Winters, who was approaching with a portfolio in hand. The woman's cool gaze assessed Elena from head to toe. Having a private meeting with my fiancé. Cassandra's tone was light, but laced with curiosity. Mr. Thornton wanted to discuss last night, Elena answered neutrally. How thoughtful of him. Cassandra adjusted her designer watch. James has always had a soft spot for humanitarian gestures. The implication wasn't subtle. Elena kept her expression professional. If you'll excuse me, Ms. Winters, I should start my duties. Of course. Cassandra smiled without warmth. We all have our roles here. The interaction left Elena unsettled as she returned to the service area. In the staff dining room, conversations hushed as she entered. News of her meeting with the boss had already circulated. Some faces showed curiosity, others resentment. Marisol, one of the few staff members who had been friendly since Elena's arrival, slid a cup of coffee toward her. So are you fired or promoted? Neither yet. Elena sipped the coffee gratefully. He offered me a new position. Marisol's eyebrows shot up. Seriously, after 3 weeks? Because of what happened with Lucas. Girl, be careful. Marisol lowered her voice. The Winters have been running this house for 5 years. They don't like change, and they definitely don't like threats to their territory. I'm hardly a threat. You underestimate yourself. Marisol glanced around. The staff talks. You've got education, skills beyond housekeeping, and now you've got the boss's attention and his kids' approval. In this world, that's a threat. Before Elena could respond, Gregory entered. Ms. Ramirez, you're 20 minutes behind schedule. The guest rooms won't clean themselves. Elena nodded, swallowing the last of her coffee. As she gathered her cleaning cart, Gregory added, Mr. Thornton mentioned a proposal to me. I've explained that while your actions were commendable, creating a special position would disrupt our established system. So that was how it would be. I see. You're still in your probationary period, Ms. Ramirez. It would be unfortunate to receive a negative evaluation so early in your employment. The threat was thinly veiled. Elena pushed her cart toward the elevator, mind racing. She needed this job, or rather, she needed the promotion James Thornton had offered. But accepting it would make an enemy of the Winters' siblings, who could make her working life impossible. As the elevator doors opened on the upper floor, she was surprised to find Lucas waiting in the hallway, school backpack in hand. Hi, Elena, he said, a shy smile replacing his usual serious expression. Dad said you might be working up here today. Good morning, Lucas. Shouldn't you be heading to school? In a minute. I wanted to give you something first. He dug into his backpack and pulled out a slightly crumpled drawing. I made this in art class. The paper showed 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, surrounded by what appeared to be a force field. The words, "My hero," were printed carefully, at the top. It's you and me, Lucas explained unnecessarily, with a safety bubble because that's your superpower. Elena felt a lump form in her throat. Thank you, Lucas. It's wonderful. Are you going to take the job my dad offered? He said you might help teach everyone how to save people. I'm still thinking about it. Lucas frowned. Why? Don't you want to work with us more? The innocent question contained layers of complexity Elena couldn't explain to a 12-year-old. It's complicated, Lucas. Sometimes adults have to consider many factors before making decisions. Like what? Like whether everyone would be comfortable with the change. Lucas's expression darkened. You mean Cassandra and Mr. Winters, they don't like things to change. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze Elena. Change is difficult for most people, but sometimes it's good, right? Like when the doctors changed Mom's treatment plan. Dad said that was a good change, even though it was scary at first. From the mouths of babes. Elena studied the drawing, again thinking of her daughters, of Lucas, of second chances and calculated risks. "You're right," she said finally. "Some changes are worth it, even when they're scary." Lucas beamed, then glanced at his watch, a child-sized version of the expensive timepieces his father wore. "I gotta go. Harvey's waiting to drive me to school." He hesitated, then added, "Will you be here when I get back?" The question carried weight beyond its simple words. Elena nodded. "I'll be here." As Lucas hurried toward the stairs, Elena carefully tucked the drawing into her pocket. The decision crystallized in her mind. She would accept James Thornton's offer, despite the complications it would bring, not just for her daughters and their future, but for a boy who had lost too much and found unexpected connection with the woman who had saved his life. Whatever storm was coming with the Winters siblings, she would weather it. Some battles were worth fighting, especially when children's well-being hung in the balance. 3 months into her new role as Director of Household Health and Safety, Elena had transformed more than just the emergency protocols at the Thornton estate. The staff dining room now featured a fully stocked first aid station. Weekly training sessions had become a regular fixture, with even the most skeptical employees eventually participating. Most significantly, the household atmosphere had shifted, subtle but unmistakable, like the change in barometric pressure before weather turns. Not all the changes were positive. "Another complaint from Ms. Winters," James said, sliding a memo across his desk during their weekly meeting. "Apparently your safety inspection of the pool area conflicts with preparations for her charity luncheon tomorrow." Elena skimmed the formal complaint, the 3rd this month. "The inspection is scheduled during the staff rotation when it would cause minimum disruption. Moving it would mean paying overtime, which I'm happy to authorize if necessary. It's not about the money, Mr. Thornton. It's about establishing that safety protocols aren't optional or secondary to social events." James leaned back in his chair, studying her with something that might have been admiration. "You've become quite the advocate in a short time. That's what you hired me to do." "Indeed." He gathered the papers on his desk, organizing them, with efficient movements. "How are the staff responding to the new emergency response certifications?" "Better than expected. 23 out of 27 have completed basic training. The kitchen staff have been particularly enthusiastic. Turns out many of them had family stories about cooking accidents." "And Gregory?" Elena hesitated. The household manager had maintained rigid professionalism while subtly undermining her at every opportunity. "Mr. Winters has completed the required training, but has not endorsed the program to other staff." Diplomatic answer. James's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Lucas tells me you're teaching him CPR. That wasn't part of your job description. He asked to learn after watching one of the staff training sessions. I cleared it with his tutor to count toward his science education." James nodded, unexpected emotion crossing his features. "He's different these past months, more engaged. He's talking about wanting to become a doctor. He's a bright boy with a natural empathy. Those are excellent qualities for medicine. Victoria would be pleased." The mention of his ill wife was casual, but Eleanor noted how his fingers tightened, almost imperceptibly on his pen. She always believed he had healing hands, even as a toddler, said he could sense when she had a headache before she mentioned it. These glimpses into the Thornton family history had become more frequent in their meetings, brief moments where professional boundaries softened. Eleanor found herself increasingly curious about the woman whose absence shaped the household dynamics, but she never pressed for details. "The hospital called yesterday," James continued, surprising her with the personal disclosure. "Victoria's latest treatment results are promising. They're discussing the possibility of her returning to the US for the final phase of recovery." "That's wonderful news," Elena said sincerely. "Lucas must be thrilled." "I haven't told him yet." James stood, moving to the window that overlooked the manicured grounds. Hope is a complicated gift to offer a child who's experienced disappointment. Elena thought of her own daughters, how carefully she managed their expectations about their father's sporadic communication. Children are stronger than we give them credit for, especially when they're prepared for all possibilities. voice of experience. My daughters have had their share of life lessons. James turned from the window. I'd like to meet them someday. Lucas speaks of them often, though they've never met. He asks about them. Children are curious about other children's lives. Perhaps we could arrange something, a weekend visit maybe. The pool house is sitting empty. The suggestion caught Elena off guard. The professional boundaries she'd carefully maintained these past months seemed suddenly permeable. That's very generous, but you're concerned about perceptions. James's directness was one of his most disarming qualities. The household would see it as special treatment, wouldn't it be? Perhaps. He returned to his desk. Consider it an open invitation. Now, what else is on our agenda? The meeting continued, but Elena found her thoughts returning to the invitation. It wasn't the first time James had shown interest in her life outside the estate. Small comments, thoughtful questions, a pattern of attention that felt increasingly personal. She had dismissed Marisol's knowing looks and veiled hints, telling herself that James Thornton's interest was in her professional capacity and his son's welfare. Yet there were moments, a lingering glance, a conversation that stretched beyond. Its scheduled time, a casual touch when passing documents, that suggested otherwise. Elena had built careful walls around her heart after Miguel left, focusing entirely on providing stability for her daughters. Romance was a luxury she couldn't afford, particularly not with an employer whose life occupied a different stratosphere from her own. Whatever attraction might simmer beneath their professional relationship would remain unacknowledged, or so she had resolved, until the following evening changed everything. Elena was working late, finalizing the new emergency evacuation plans, when a soft knock interrupted her concentration. James stood in the doorway of the small office they'd converted for her use, jacket discarded, tie loosened. "You're here late," he observed. "Just finishing the evacuation protocols for next week's presentation." She glanced at her watch, surprised, to find it was nearly 9 o'clock. "I didn't realize the time." Neither did I. He entered the room, settling into the chair opposite her desk with uncharacteristic weariness. "Board meeting ran long. Acquisition negotiations are always tedious. Successful, I hope." "We'll see." He rubbed his temples. "You haven't eaten, have you?" "I had a sandwich earlier." "Hours ago, I'd wager." James stood. "Come on, the kitchen staff is gone, but I make a decent pasta. Lucas is at a school friend's. House for a sleepover, so I'm on my own for dinner anyway." The invitation crossed a line Elena had carefully observed these past months. Sharing a meal alone, away from the context of their professional roles, felt dangerous. "I should really finish this report." "The report will wait until morning." "Food is a safety issue, isn't it, Director Ramirez?" His use of her title was gently teasing. Before she could formulate another excuse, her stomach betrayed her with an audible growl. James raised an eyebrow and Elena found herself laughing. "Apparently my body overrules my objections." "As it should. I promise no work talk over dinner, just two hungry people sharing a meal." The kitchen was enormous and gleaming, designed for staff to prepare elaborate meals for the family and their frequent guests. Watching James navigate the space with casual familiarity as he gathered ingredients surprised her. "You actually cook," she observed, perching on a stool at the center island. "Don't sound so shocked." He pulled pasta from a pantry the size core of her entire kitchen at home. "I was a graduate student living on ramen before I was a CEO, some skills you never forget." "I assumed you'd always been wealthy?" He glanced up from chopping garlic. "My father was a community college professor, my mother a librarian. I put myself through college working construction in the summers." The revelation shifted something in Elena's perception. "How did you go from there to here?" She gestured at the mansion around them. "The short version? Right algorithm, right moment in the market, right venture capitalist believing in a scrappy team working out of a garage." He added olive oil to a pan, the garlic sizzling as it hit the hot surface. "The longer version involves a lot of 70-hour weeks, missed holidays, and luck that I sometimes think I didn't deserve. And Victoria? Was she part of that journey? James's movements slowed momentarily. From nearly the beginning. We met at MIT. She was the brilliant one. Double PhD in biochemistry and computational biology. Her research is what drove our initial success. I didn't realize. The official narrative of Thornton Biotech had always centered on James as the visionary founder. Most people don't. He added tomatoes to the pan, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. Victoria preferred working in the lab to public appearances. When we went public, the market responded better to a single founder narrative. She never minded. He paused. At least, she said she didn't. The regret in his voice was palpable. Elena found herself responding to his vulnerability with her own truth. My ex-husband used to say he was fine with my nursing career, but he wasn't. Not really. He wanted me home with the girls while he worked, but we needed both incomes. She traced a pattern on the marble countertop. When the hospital cut my position, he saw it as an opportunity to move back to Mexico and start his family business. The girls and I were supposed to follow once he was established. But you didn't. His calls became less frequent. The money he sent home decreased, then stopped. Eventually, I realized he'd started another life there. Eleanor shrugged, the old pain dulled by time. The girls still ask when they'll see him again. I've stopped making excuses for him. James served the pasta into 2 bowls, sliding one toward her. Children see more than we realize. Lucas knew Victoria and I were struggling before her diagnosis. I thought we'd hidden it well. Parents always do. Eleanor twirled pasta around her fork. This is delicious, by the way. My one culinary skill. James leaned against the counter, studying her. I haven't talked about Victoria like this in a long time, not with anyone except her doctors. Sometimes it's easier with someone who doesn't share the history. Is that what we are, Elena? People without shared history? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Elena met his gaze steadily. We have 3 months of professional history, Mr. Thornton. James, he corrected softly. After sharing family stories over midnight pasta, I think we've earned first-name basis. The moment stretched, tension building like a held breath. Eleanor was acutely aware of the empty kitchen, the late hour, the narrowing space between them as James moved around the island to stand closer. This is complicated, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Life generally is. His hand covered hers where it rested on the countertop. But some complications are worth navigating. The kitchen door swung open, shattering the moment. Cassandra stood in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to cold assessment as she took in the scene. James, darling, I've been looking everywhere for you. Her voice was honey over ice. The Bartlett Foundation called about tomorrow's luncheon. Her gaze flicked to Eleanor, then to their hands, which James had not moved. I didn't realize you were in a meeting. James straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. Just having a late dinner after both working late. Elena, thank you for your update on the evacuation protocols. We'll continue our discussion tomorrow. The dismissal was gentle but clear. Elena gathered her things, nodding politely to Cassandra as she passed. Good night, Ms. Winters, Mr. Thornton. As the door closed behind her, she heard Cassandra's voice pitched low but carrying in the quiet house. Really, James? The help? I thought you had better judgment. Eleanor didn't wait to hear his response. She gathered her belongings from her office and drove home in a state of conflicted emotions. The evening had revealed new dimensions to James Thornton, making him more human and therefore more dangerous to her carefully ordered life. Whatever had almost happened in that kitchen couldn't happen again. The professional opportunity he'd given her was too important to her daughter's future to risk on feelings that could never lead anywhere. Or so she told herself, even as she replayed the warmth of his hand over hers and the connection that had flared between them in that unguarded moment. The annual Thornton Foundation Gala transformed the estate into a showcase of wealth and philanthropy. 500 guests in formal attire mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their collective net worth rivaling the GDP of small nations. For The household staff, it was the most demanding event of the year, requiring weeks of preparation and military precision execution. For Elena, it marked 6 months since the night she had saved Lucas's life at a similar gathering. 6 months of building a new role in the household. 6 months of navigating the treacherous waters between her professional responsibilities and her increasingly complicated feelings for James Thornton. Since their late-night dinner in the kitchen, a careful distance had been maintained. Their meetings remained strictly professional, though Eleanor sometimes caught James watching her with an expression that suggested unspoken thoughts. Cassandra had become even more coolly polite, her subtle undermining of Elena's authority more frequent. The engagement announcement Elena had been half expecting hadn't materialized, but rumors circulated among the staff about tensions between the couple. Tonight, dressed in the formal black attire required for senior staff during major events, Elena supervised the medical station she had established in a discreet alcove. 2 trained staff members would rotate shifts throughout the evening, prepared for everything from minor injuries to cardiac emergencies. The additional safety measures had initially been dismissed by Gregory as excessive, but James had backed Elena's recommendations without hesitation. "Everything set?" James appeared beside her, impeccable in a tuxedo that emphasized his athletic build. "The governor just arrived. I should greet him, but I wanted to check in first." "We're fully prepared," Elena assured him. "Medical team. On rotation, evacuation plans reviewed. Staff all briefed on emergency procedures." "Excellent," he lowered his voice. "How are your daughters doing with their school project? Lucas mentioned they were building a model of the solar system." The casual reference to conversations between their children still surprised Elena. Since accepting James's invitation for her daughters to visit the estate 2 months ago, an unexpected friendship had developed between Lucas and the twins. What began as occasional weekend playdates had evolved into regular visits with Lucas, sometimes joining them for pizza nights at Elena's modest apartment in Queens. "They've commandeered my living room," Elena smiled. "Jupiter's papier-mâché rings are a constant hazard to navigation." Lucas talks about them constantly. They've been good for him. James hesitated. "I've been meaning to ask." "James, darling." Cassandra appeared, resplendent in a designer gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. "The governor is asking for you. Elena, there seems to be an issue with one of the catering staff. Something about allergies? Perhaps you should investigate." The interruption was deliberate, but Eleanor nodded professionally. "Of course, excuse me." As she moved through the crowd toward the kitchen, Eleanor caught fragments of conversations, market forecasts, political donations, vacation homes in exotic locations. This world, with its unimaginable wealth and power, remained as foreign to her as when she'd first arrived, yet her position within it had evolved in ways she never anticipated. The catering issue was minor and quickly resolved. As Elena was returning to her station, she passed the library and noticed Lucas sitting alone, a tablet in hand. "Hiding again?" she asked, remembering their first meeting. He looked up with a grin. "Dad says I only have to make an appearance for the foundation speech, then I can escape." Smart strategy. Elena sat beside him. "Everything okay?" Lucas shrugged, suddenly serious. "Dad told me this morning about Mom coming home next month." Eleanor nodded, having been briefed on the medical transport arrangements as part of her role. Victoria Thornton's improvement had progressed to the point where her doctors believed she could continue treatment from the estate with proper medical support. "How do you feel about that?" "Happy, scared." Lucas set aside his tablet. "What if she's different? What if I'm different and she doesn't, like who I am now?" "Your mom will love you no matter what." "Like you love Sophia and Isabella, even when they mess up?" "Exactly like that." Eleanor smiled. "Being a mother means loving your children through all their changes." Lucas nodded, absorbing this. "What about Cassandra? She's been acting weird since Dad told her about Mom coming back. I heard them arguing." Eleanor maintained a neutral expression, though she'd witnessed the tension herself. Cassandra's position in the household had become ambiguous with the news of Victoria's return. Though James had been clear that his marriage had effectively ended before Victoria's illness, The legal separation had never been formalized due to her condition. Adults sometimes have complicated feelings, Lucas. Change is difficult for everyone. She doesn't want Mom to come back. She told Gregory that everything would be ruined. Lucas looked up, his eyes troubled. Do you think she'll try to make Mom leave again? Elena stilled. What do you mean, again? Lucas bit his lip, suddenly looking younger than his 12 years. I wasn't supposed to hear. It was last year, before Mom went to Switzerland. Cassandra was talking to Gregory in the garden. She said that Victoria needed to accept reality and step aside permanently. That Dad deserved a clean break. His voice dropped to a whisper. 2 days later, Mum got worse and had to be moved to the special clinic. A chill ran through Elena. Lucas, did you ever tell your father what you heard? No. His eyes filled with tears. I was scared. And then Mom left and Cassandra was always around and I just didn't know what to do. Elena chose her words carefully. Sometimes we overhear things without understanding the full context. Cassandra might have been referring to the business, or I found something else. Lucas pulled out his phone, navigating to his email. Last week, when Cassandra left her tablet in the living room, there were emails open between her and some doctor in Switzerland. He showed Elena the screen. I took pictures. Is this bad? Did I do something wrong? Elena scanned the emails, her nursing background allowing her to understand the medical terminology. The correspondence, dated throughout Victoria's treatment, detailed medication changes and condition updates, information that should have been shared only with Victoria's immediate family or medical power of attorney. Lucas, I need to take this to your father right away. Is Mom in danger? Fear sharpened his voice. I don't know, but we need to show these to your father. Elena stood, steadying herself against a wave of disbelief. Stay here, okay? I'll be right back. Finding James amid the gala proved challenging. When she finally spotted him near the main staircase, he was deep in conversation with political donors. Elena approached with professional composure, touching his elbow lightly. Mr. Thornton, I apologize for the interruption, but there's an urgent matter requiring your attention. James excused himself smoothly. What's happened? It's about Lucas and Victoria. She kept her voice low. We need privacy. Something in her expression must have conveyed the severity, because James immediately led her to his study, closing the door behind them. What's going on? Elena handed him Lucas's phone. Your son found these emails on Cassandra's tablet. They appear to be correspondence with Victoria's medical team in Switzerland. James scanned the messages, his expression darkening. These are from Dr. Reinhardt, Victoria's lead physician. How did Cassandra gain access to this information? Lucas overheard a conversation last year before Victoria's transfer to Switzerland between Cassandra and Gregory. Elena relayed what the boy had told her, watching as James's face transformed from confusion to cold fury. Where is Lucas now? In the library. He's worried he did something wrong by showing these to me. James moved to the desk, picking up the phone. Security, please locate Ms. Winters and Mr. Winters immediately. Escort them to my study, discreetly. He hung up, then made another call. Dr. Chambers, James Thornton, I need you to review Victoria's medical records from the past 18 months. Specifically, look for any changes to her treatment protocol that weren't authorized by me or her designated healthcare proxy. Yes, it's urgent. When he finished, he turned to Elena. I need to speak with Cassandra and Gregory alone. Would you stay with Lucas? Tell him he did exactly the right thing. Of course. As she reached the door, James called her name. Elena, thank you for bringing this to me immediately, for protecting my family. The weight of his words hung between them. Elena nodded and returned to the library where Lucas waited anxiously. Dad's handling it, she assured him, sitting beside him on the sofa. You did the right thing showing me those emails. Is Mom going to be okay? Your dad is making sure of it. Elena put her arm around his shoulders. You were very brave. They sat in silence for several minutes before Lucas spoke again. If something bad happened to Mom because of Cassandra, it's my fault for not saying something sooner. No, Lucas, none of this is your fault. Elena turned to face him directly. Adults are responsible for their own actions. You're a child who was placed in an impossible situation. But I knew something was wrong and I didn't. You're telling the truth now, that's what matters. The library door opened and James entered, his face grave but composed. Lucas, I need to speak with you. He glanced at Eleanor. Both of you, if you wouldn't mind staying. James sat across from them, choosing his words with care. I've spoken with Cassandra and Gregory. They've admitted to interfering with your mother's medical care, not in ways that endangered her life, he added quickly, seeing Lucas's expression, but they did delay her treatment progress and manipulated information about her condition. Why? Lucas whispered. For position. For control. James's jaw tightened. Cassandra believed that if your mother remained in Switzerland, eventually I would move forward with divorce proceedings and marry her instead. What's going to happen to them? They've been removed from the property. The legal consequences will follow. James reached for his son's hand. I've spoken to your mother's doctors. They're reviewing everything, but they believe she's receiving proper care now and her recovery is genuine. She'll be home next month as planned. Lucas's relief was palpable. Can I talk to her? Tonight? I've arranged a video call for after the gala. James smiled tiredly. She sends her love and says she's proud of you for being so observant. As Lucas relaxed, James turned to Eleanor. I owe you an apology. I brought Cassandra and Gregory into our lives, gave them positions of trust. I failed to see what was happening, under my own roof. You couldn't have known. I should have. His expression was haunted. Victoria and I were separated before her diagnosis. The marriage had broken down under the pressure of the company's growth, my absences, her research demands. But when she became ill, everything else fell away. I realized what truly mattered. He looked at his son. We were working toward reconciliation when her condition worsened and the doctors recommended the clinic in Switzerland. Elena absorbed this revelation, pieces falling into place. And Cassandra was initially Victoria's executive assistant at the company. When Victoria stepped back due to illness, Cassandra moved into a more prominent role. The relationship between us developed after Victoria and I had separated, but before her diagnosis. James ran a hand through his hair. A mistake I've regretted every day since. The honesty of his confession struck Elena deeply. This wasn't the calculated businessman or even the concerned father she had come to know. This was simply a man acknowledging his human failings. What happens now? She asked softly. We prepare for Victoria's return. She'll need ongoing medical support, which is where your expertise becomes even more valuable. James hesitated. I hope you'll consider staying on, despite the chaos this revelation has caused. Of course I'll stay. Elena glanced at Lucas, who was watching their exchange intently. I've become rather attached to this household. 3 weeks later, as summer sunshine bathed the estate grounds, Elena watched from a respectful distance as a medical transport arrived at the front entrance. James and Lucas stood waiting as attendants carefully helped Victoria Thornton from the vehicle. Even after months of illness, Victoria's presence was commanding. Tall and slender, with Lucas's serious eyes and thoughtful expression, she moved slowly but with determination. The reunion between mother and son brought tears to Elena's eyes. Lucas throwing himself into his mother's arms, Victoria holding him as though she'd never let go again. The family disappeared inside, beginning the private process of reconnection and healing. Elena returned to her office, focusing on the updated medical protocols Victoria's care would require. She had just finished a supply inventory when a knock interrupted her. James stood in the doorway. Do you have a moment? Of course. How is Victoria settling in? Better than expected. He entered, closing the door behind him. She'd like to meet you. Tomorrow, perhaps, when she's had some rest. I'd be honored. James took the chair opposite her desk, an echo of their first official meeting 6 months earlier. Victoria and I had a long conversation about the past, the present, what we want for the future. He met Eleanor's gaze directly. We've agreed to proceed with our legal separation as we'd planned before her illness. The relationship had reached its natural conclusion even before Cassandra's interference. Elena maintained her professional composure. "I appreciate your transparency, but that's a private matter." "Not entirely." James leaned forward. "Because it affects what I'm about to say next." The intensity of his gaze made her heart quicken. "Which is?" "That night in the kitchen when we shared pasta and stories, something changed for me. Actually, it had been changing since the moment you saved Lucas without a thought for protocol or position. You brought humanity back into this house, Elena. You reminded me what matters." "James, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "I'm not offering you anything right now except honesty. My family is healing. Lucas needs stability. Victoria deserves respect and support through her recovery. And you," his voice softened, "you deserve someone who approaches you as an equal, not an employer with complicated circumstances." "What are you suggesting?" "That when the time is right, when Victoria is settled and Lucas has adjusted, I'd like to explore what might exist between us, properly, openly, if you're willing." The proposition hung in the air between them, unexpected yet somehow inevitable. Elena considered the complications, the potential challenges, the differences in their worlds. "That would be quite the change in household dynamics," she said finally. "Indeed," a smile touched his lips. "But as someone wise once told me, some changes are worth it, even when they're scary." Her own words reflected back to her. Elena felt the truth of them resonate. "I'd like that, when the time is right." James nodded, understanding all that remained unspoken between them. Until then, we continue as we are. I have a household to keep safe, and you have a family to rebuild." A wise approach. He stood to leave, pausing at the door. "Lucas has invited your daughters for a movie night this weekend. Victoria suggested they all camp out in the media room. Would that be all right?" The image of their children together, building connections that might someday become something more formal, filled Eleanor with unexpected warmth. They'd love that. After James left, Elena moved to the window that overlooked the gardens. 6 months ago, she had entered this house as an invisible presence, seeking only financial stability for her daughters. Now she stood at the threshold of possibilities she had never imagined, not just for herself, but for the children whose futures had always been her primary concern. The path ahead would not be simple. There would be adjustments, challenges, moments of doubt. The worlds they came from remained fundamentally different, but perhaps that difference was their strength, her practical compassion balancing his visionary drive, his resources enhancing her nurturing instincts. From the garden below came the sound of laughter. Lucas was showing his mother the security features Elena had implemented, pointing proudly to emergency call buttons and first aid stations. Victoria listened attentively, one arm around her son's shoulders, the other gripping a cane that supported her still recovering body. Life's most profound changes often came from unexpected moments. A child choking at a dinner party, a late night conversation over pasta, a brave boy showing emails he didn't fully understand. Elena had learned that the measure of a person wasn't found in their wealth or position, but in how they responded when the unexpected altered everything they thought they knew. By that measure, perhaps she and James weren't so different after all. Both had faced life's sudden turns with courage and adaptation. Both had placed their children's welfare above their own comfort. Both had recognized, in each other, something worth navigating complications to explore. When the time was right, they would begin that exploration. Until then, Eleanor would continue building safety and stability in this house that had become so much more than a workplace. She would watch over Lucas as he reconnected with his mother. She would guide her daughters as they expanded their horizons, and she would allow herself to believe in possibilities that, 6 months ago, would have seemed as remote as the stars in her daughter's solar system project. Some changes were worth embracing, even when, especially when, they arrived in ways you never could have predicted. Elena had saved a child's life through quick thinking and trained hands. In doing so, she had inadvertently saved something else, a family fractured by illness and deception, a man lost in obligation and regret. and perhaps most surprisingly, her own capacity to imagine a future beyond mere survival. The most vital safety protocol she had discovered was the courage to recognize when something precious was at risk, and the wisdom to know when protecting your heart meant opening it to new possibilities, rather than walling it away from potential harm. 6 months later, the Thornton estate hosted a different kind of gathering. There were no politicians, no business magnates, no glamorous celebrities seeking photo opportunities. Instead, the sprawling lawn had been transformed into a training ground, with stations dedicated to different emergency response scenarios. Elena moved among the participants, observing as staff from 6 different household estates practiced CPR on training mannequins. The Household Safety Initiative, funded by the Thornton Foundation, had expanded beyond their own property to become a model program for wealthy families throughout the region. Ms. Ramirez, a young woman, approached, clipboard in hand. "The pediatric choking demonstration is about to begin. Mrs. Thornton suggested you might want to lead it personally." "Thank you, I'll be right there." Eleanor checked her watch, noting that the children's workshop would be finishing soon as well. Across the lawn, she spotted Victoria seated beneath a canopy, deep in conversation with the directors of 3 other household staffs. Though still using a cane, Victoria had regained much of her strength in the months since her return. Her brilliant mind had turned to the initiative with characteristic focus, using her scientific background to enhance the training protocols Eleanor had developed. Their partnership had surprised everyone, perhaps even themselves. Where Eleanor had expected awkwardness, she had found respect. Where she had anticipated distance, she had discovered shared purpose. Victoria had welcomed Elena's expertise without reservation, treating her as a valued colleague rather than the woman her ex-husband was increasingly involved with. Near the pool house, Lucas was demonstrating proper rescue techniques to a group of wide-eyed children, including Sophia and Isabella. At 13, he had embraced his role as a junior safety ambassador with pride, his earlier withdrawal replaced by confident engagement. The twins watched him with undisguised admiration, hanging on his every word. "Quite the teacher, isn't he?" James appeared beside Elena, handing her a bottle of water. "Victoria says he gets that from me, but we both know it's all her influence." "He's found his purpose," Elena observed. "That confidence is all his own." James watched his son with evident pride. The board approved the expansion of the initiative this morning, full funding for training programs at 50 additional households next year, with scholarships for staff to obtain advanced certification. "That's wonderful news." Elena smiled, knowing how hard he had worked to convince the more traditional board members of the program's value. "I had an excellent case study to present." James's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. Hard to argue with results. The past 6 months had seen their relationship evolve with careful deliberation. Professional boundaries remained during working hours, but evenings and weekends increasingly found them together. Family dinners with all 3 children, quiet conversations on the terrace after Lucas was asleep, gradual integration of their separate lives. The gossip had been inevitable. Society columnists speculated about the billionaire and the former housekeeper. Some staff had resigned, uncomfortable with the shifting dynamics. But those who remained had adapted, many finding that Elena's new position in James's personal life only enhanced their working conditions. "Victoria wants to discuss expanding the children's program," James said, nodding toward his ex-wife. "She's thinking of developing an app that teaches emergency response through gaming." "That's brilliant. Lucas would love to help design it." She suggested the twins might be good beta testers. James hesitated. She also mentioned that the East Wing renovations will be finished next month, said it might be time to discuss making some changes to our living arrangements. Eleanor looked at him in surprise. Though their relationship had deepened, they had maintained separate households. Elena and the twins in their apartment in Queens, James and Lucas at the estate with Victoria in the separate pool house during her recovery. Victoria suggested this. She pointed out that the children are already functioning as a unit, that the separation is increasingly artificial. James squeezed her hand. "She's right, Eleanor. I'm ready if you are. The children are ready." Before Eleanor could respond, Lucas called out, waving them over to the demonstration area. "Dad, Elena, come see what we learned." "We'll finish this conversation later," Elena promised, moving toward the children with James beside her. As they watched Lucas guide the twins through a rescue demonstration, Elena felt the pieces of her life shifting into a new configuration. Not perfect, not without challenges, but rich with possibility and connection. From the moment she had stepped forward to save a choking child, every decision had led to this. Not just a career transformation or an unexpected romance, but the creation of something more profound, a blended family built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Later that evening, as stars appeared above the estate grounds and the last participants departed, Eleanor found herself alone on the terrace. The view of manicured gardens and distant city lights still sometimes struck her, as belonging to someone else's life. Yet increasingly, she felt at home in this world, not because she had adapted to its wealth and privilege, but because she had helped transform it with her values of service and compassion. "There you are," James joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Lucas finally went to sleep. "He's already planning next month's workshop." Elena accepted the glass, smiling. "The twins are the same. They've drafted a presentation for their class on how to be a hero." Wonder where they got that from? James's gaze was warm with admiration. "You started something important here, Elena. Something that's changing lives." "We all did." She looked out at the estate that had become so much more than a workplace. "Sometimes the most important safety measure is having someone who sees danger and isn't afraid to step forward, regardless of rules or expectations. Or someone who recognizes when a family needs healing, not just physical safety." James touched his glass to hers. "Two changes worth making." "Two changes worth making," she echoed, knowing that the greatest change had been within herself. The courage to embrace possibility, to trust in connection, to believe that sometimes saving others meant allowing yourself to be transformed in return. Dear listeners, we hope that Elena and James's journey has touched your hearts. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most life-changing moments come when we least expect them, and that courage can transform not just one life, but many. If you connected with this tale of unexpected love and second chances, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. We've created a special playlist of equally moving stories about people who found love while saving others. You'll find it by clicking to the left. Every day we bring you unique narratives that explore life's complexities and the power of human connection. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment that completely changed the direction of your life? Join our community of storytelling enthusiasts and never miss our upcoming